Greetings, everyone within the Kingdom of England, Empire Val Beyond. You know what it is. Dion de Belmont from the illustrious noble house of Belmont. Today is December 23rd, 2974 of the Gregorian calendar, of the Berber calendar, which is equivalent to the 2024 Gregorian calendar. And like we say here at the noble house of Belmont, as well as the Third Temple English Church of England, it's a beautiful time to be alive. Have to give honors to our King, Clifford Jefferson from the Royal House of Plantagenet, our Queen, Lisa Jordan from the Royal House of Galweton, to the heirs, successors, to the trustees, to the loyal members, subjects, and the righteous people in the world, in the realm. And today, I'd like to bring you, brothers and sisters, to another lecture or another video in regards to who you are, especially those of you who are known as Freemen, aka Berbers. In case you don't know who you are, we're going to allow this sister named Shamisa tell you who you are, or at least show you based off of the evidence she has. And then we're going to dive a little bit further into the term Freeman, and we're going to go ahead and get an understanding of its origin, at least back into the Kingdom of England, all the way to the colonies or colonial days, which technically you're still living because you're still underneath occupation in regards to those who started that civil war, which you call an American Revolution, because it technically was a civil war. Both of these people or factions were truly subjects of Great Britain. So, thus, the American Revolution was nothing more than a British Civil War. All right, but let's go ahead and get started with this video. Once again, I am your brother Dion de Belmont. For those of you who just now get an opportunity to check out my page, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so therefore you can be notified when we upload new videos, as well when we go live. Also, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the Third Temple English Church of England YouTube page, headed by the true de jure King of England, King Clifford Jefferson from the Royal House of Plantagenet, who has been doing a wonderful job bringing the consciousness to those of us who need to know who we are in this day and time, especially if you have no idea who you are. So, I don't want to go ahead and be too long-winded. Let's go ahead and get started on this beautiful lesson. I digress.
The ancestors of the Khoisan were a numerous and global people. They branched apart, one going further south of Africa and the other from Asia into the Americas. This is why the Paleo-American has sub-Saharan African DNA. It is Khoisan. and this is why some Black Americans have Asiatic features with no recent Asian ancestry. The ancient Berbers arrived to the Americas next and mixed with the Khoisan, as they did in Africa. This is why the Paleo-American has Northeast African, Mediterranean, and Neolithic European DNA. This is why some Black Americans who have no recent European ancestry have European features. This is why the indigenous peoples encountered by the conquistadores were said to have resembled Moors, Spaniards, Frenchmen, and Ethiopians. Now, this is a book written by a French author called The Berbers in America, and it talks about the many indigenous tribes with Berber names and traditions, which goes to show the ancient connection between the Americas and the Berbers. Now, this is not to discredit that, the Paleo-American was not indigenous. Now, with the Native Americans, it's well known the Siberian connection between the two. It is well known the Asian connection. Now, as far as the Paleo-American, the connection is with the Khoi, and the connection is with the Berbers. These are ancient South African Khoisan temples. Notice how they resemble the Black Americans, and also notice how they match ancient American sites.
See, and as you can see, brothers and sisters, from the lesson that the sister just presented, that we are those Berbers. And for those of you who need a little bit more convincing, let's continue. All right. So we know Berbers are the true indigenous people to the territories we call the Americas, North Africa, as well as Europe. And they were known as the Freeman. Once again, they were known as the Freeman. So we're going to go ahead and see what Freeman means in the territory of England, because we know that Freeman is an English term. The territory that we're currently domiciling was underneath and still underneath the auspices of the Kingdom of England. So it's best to know, what do Freeman mean in England, or in this case, in English. So it says Freeman. History, family, crest, coat of arms. There you go. The 3 diamonds on the shield. And the etymology. It says etymology of Freeman. The surname Freeman, and they're utilizing it in the surname sense. Alright? Surname equates to the people. Surname no means free name. So free name for free people, in this case Freeman. And Freeman, an ancient Anglo-Saxon name whose history dates back to the dates before the Norman conquest of 1066. It says the name is derived from a freeman or frigman, Old English words and personal names meaning freeborn man. So as we can see, the term freeman means a freeborn man. It says we find this interesting take on the origin of the name in the early days of feudalism. 2 neighbors bearing some common Christian name would be distinguished by epithets denoting their respective conditions as John Le Freeman and John Le Blond, and these epithets would often become family names. In the hundred rooms, we have not only many Le Freemans, but also one Matilda Freewoman and an Agnes Freewife or Freewife, probably the wife of a bondman. Okay, so that's what we see from the House of Names in regards to Freeman. Now, once again, we know that this term, Freeman, also was utilized in the territory we call the British Crown or the 13 colonies. Alright, so let's go to, before we go to that, we need to understand that Berbers were also known as Freemen. Because most folks are going to wonder, like, well, how did you get that? And we know that Berbers are also known as the Amazigh. Now, there's going to be conflict when it comes down to the 2 terms, because today those who are known as the Amazigh see the term Berber as a pejorative. But we can see that there's documentation to show otherwise, that Berber was not considered a pejorative term. We also know that the Greeks also denoted that the term Berber comes from barbarian. We know barbarian means barbed, fork-bearded Aryan, warlike. And during this time, many people could have fit that description. So we can't really say that that's where Berber comes from. But just for the sake of the argument, we know Berber means nobleman or freeman. Alright, so let's go ahead and just read what it says, names of the Berber people. It says the indigenous population of the Maghreb region of North Africa encompassed a diverse grouping of several heterogeneous ethnic groups who predate the arrival of Arabs and the Arab migration to the Maghreb. They are collectively known as Berbers or Amazigh in English. The native plural form Amazighan is sometimes also used in English, while Berber is more widely known among English speakers, as you can see, which we're utilizing it in sense as speaking who we are ethnically wise. Its usage is a subject of debate due to historical background as an exonym and present equivalence with the Arabic word for barbarian, like I just spoke about. When speaking English, indigenous North Africans typically refer to themselves as Amazigh. Historically, these groups of people did not refer to themselves as Berbers, but had their own terms to refer to themselves. For example, the Caballos used the term Lecobeyo to refer to their own people, while the Kiowas, hopefully I said that correctly, identified themselves as Ishawayuan instead of Berber or Amazigh. And it says the Numidian, Mahdi, and Libu populations of antiquity are typically understood to refer to approximately the same population as modern Amazigh or Berbers. So they're letting you know all of these people technically all the same folks, even though tribally or whoever the outside parties were calling them to be, they may came underneath a different name. And we know based off of the culture of all of these groups, they all tie ethnically to one common denominator, and it is Berber. Let's go ahead and prove straight down to what I wanted to get to. All right, so the etymology, and it says some scholars suggest that the root word Mazig in the name Amazigh may be related to early Libyco-Berber tribes, which have been referred to Amazighs in some sources. According to Ibn Khaldun, the name Mazig is derived from one of the early ancestors of the Berbers. According to the Berber author Leo Africanus, Amazigh meant freeman. So that's where you can see where the term freeman could also come from, and it could have predated before Leo Africanus. It says also, some argue that there is no root of Mazig meaning free in the modern Berber languages. However, Mazig, to be noble, generous, exists among the Amazighan of central Morocco. To Mazig, to free oneself, revolt, exists amongst the Kabyles of Qadiyah. Further, Amazigh also has a cognate in the Tuareg word Amajig, meaning noble. So it can be either freeman or noble or freeborn in this case. Alright, so why that's important is because now we want to know in the territory, once again, of the British American colonies known as the United States of America, that there had been people known as freemen. Alright, so we want to know who the freemen were known as, the 13 colonies. And it says, freeman, 13 colonies. During the American colonial period, a freeman was a person who was not a slave. We know freeman means freeborn. The term originated in 12th century Europe. Alright, so we know 12th century Europe is also during the time of Berber occupation in the territory that we call Europe, as well as so-called North Africa. Now, they're telling you that the term in the American colonial period, they know based off of their use of it, was in the 12th century. And we know the only folks who were known as freemen were Berbers. Alright, so it says in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, a man had to be a member of the church to be a freeman. In neighboring Plymouth Colony, a man did not need to be a member of the church, but he had to be elected to this privilege by the general court. Being a freeman carried with it the right to vote, and in the Plymouth, only freemen could vote by 1632. Black Law's Dictionary defines freeman as one who possesses and enjoys all of the civil and political rights belonging to the people under a free government. 2. A person who is not a slave. 3. Historically a member of the municipal corporation, a city or borough, who possesses full civic rights, especially the right to vote. 4. Historically a freeholder or villain. Those are terms underneath peerages in the Kingdom of England. Then you have historically an allodial land owner, which we know the king is the true allodial land owner, which we would know that the king would be a free man, aka freeborn. And it also says vassal, which we see many of the king's vassals or his liege subjects were free men. So for you to be most subjects of the king, who was in a liege and doing business in the name of the king, were free men. All right. And it says freedom was earned after an allotted time or after the person demanding the payment was satisfied. This was known as indentured servitude and was not originally intended as a stigma or embarrassment for the person involved. Many of the sons and daughters of the wealthy and famous of the time found themselves forced into such temporary servitude. Gary Nash reporting that many of the servants were actually nephews, nieces, cousins, and children of friends of immigrating Englishmen who paid their passage in return for their labor once in America. Pause. So as you can see, these freemen, which we know are Berbers, those who were known as freeborn within the kingdom, were actually having their family come over and work for them. And their families coming to work for them underneath this indentured bond, it was for them to pay their way to come over. Now we know that we had family on both sides of the Atlantic, because it was known as the overseas possession. And we also know that Albion was an empire, but we ain't talking about it as an Albion in this case. We just strictly speaking in regards to during the time that the British were occupying what we now known as North America and the territory that is now known as the United Kingdom. But the United Kingdom then they've come into existence as a term into the 1800s. So we're going to call it what it was during that time, and that was known as the British Isles or Great Britain. And once again, that was an overseas possession that we're talking about. And in this case, like they said, the Freeman, aka those freeborn people who we know were Berbers based off of what we just presented, who let's actually go right back to House of Names. See Freeman, Berber, history, family crest, coat of arms. As you see, comes from England. Once again, thank you, King Clifford Jefferson, for doing this work again to show us this. Berber, Berber, two chevrons, a three for the lease. Etymology of Berber. And it says, the history of the name Berber begins with the Anglo-Saxon tribes of Britain. So they're letting you know that Berbers are actually Anglo-Saxons, specifically those of us who have English ancestry. All right, and it says, and is derived from a baptismal name meaning son of Barbara. All right, so we know that Berbers themselves can be traced back to the sons of Barbara. We can be traced back to the Meshwesh tribes known as the tribe of Ma. All right, and we know that Berbers, many of them stem from a matriarch, or Berbers themselves stems from a matriarch, as you can see, sons of Barbara. And then we know the Kingdom of England is patriarch, and we know that matriarch and patriarch came together to form a perfect union, and that's how we got our monarchies today. Now, not all monarchies operate like that, but we know based off of the research, that's how the Kingdom of England operate, So there's order, there's balance, and that's how we have perfect peace when things are operating in order. And it says, in some instances, the name Berber may have also been for someone such as a Moor, because we know Moors are mix of Berbers and Arabs, or a Berber, and it's because they're going to look the same. Moors and Berbers look the same. We are the same people, pretty the same blood. It just really comes down to customary practices in regards to the cultures we're trying to uphold. All right. And it says another sources note that the name may be Norman in origin as it notes to Barbary. Famous Old Forts Abbey, 1170s, a parish near Falaise in Normandy. Hopefully I said that right. I probably didn't. The surname Berber was first found in London, where the Barbary spelling was the most popular. Late marriage records show William Gross and Barbary Marbeck was married at St. Anthelin, London in 1581. Helen, daughter of Henry Barbary, was buried at St. James Clerkwell in 1609. Barbary, daughter of Jeremiah and Barbary Bird, married at St. Mary Aldermary in 1696, and Francis Lee and Catherine Barbary were married at St. James Clerkenwell. All right. And you can read the rest of this on your own time, brothers and sisters, that part. So I just want to connect some dots here. All right, so now that we understand Berber, we understand the Berber people, where it comes from. Now let's go ahead and take a look in regards to free people of color. Because many people don't know that during the British occupation, the colonies, and even afterwards, there were some free people of color. Everyone wasn't in bondage, as we already read from the Freeman page. Everyone wasn't in bondage, and a lot of us who came over, or a lot of them who came over underneath indentured servitude, were family members. All right. So it says, in the context of the history of slavery in America, free people of color were primarily people of mixed African, European, and Native American descent who were not enslaved. However, the term also applied to people born free, that'd be freemen or Berbers, who were primarily of black African descent with little mixture. They were a distinct group of free people of color in the French colonies, including Louisiana, and in settlements on Caribbean islands such as San Domingo, which is Haiti, St. Lucia, Dominica, Guadeloupe, and Martinique. In these territories and major cities, particularly New Orleans, and those cities held by the Spanish, a substantial third class, primarily mixed race, free people developed. Uh, these colonial societies classified mixed race people in a variety of ways, generally related to the visible features and to the proportion of African ancestry. All right. It says a freed African slave was known as an Afrinki, which means freed. The term was sometimes meant to include the free people of color, but they considered the term pejorative since they had been born free. Pause. So as you can see, there's a difference between free men and freed men. They're not the same. Free men were those who were free and born free. Freedmen were those who were actually slaves and then became freed afterwards. So you have to understand that there's a difference and you need to know who was who. And that's the reason why we say genealogy is actually good to do, because once you start tracing yourself and your family origins, you'll kind of start getting an idea that not everyone was underneath the same status. You know, we just been confused and caught up and thinking everyone was. And now we have to let go of that mindset and start doing the work in regards to knowing what happened. Because like they say, he who don't know his past is likely to repeat it. Alright, so it says the term gens de couleur libres, which means free people of color, was commonly used in France was Indian colonies prior to the abolition of slavery. It frequently referred to free people of mixed African and European ancestry. In the British North America, the term free Negro was often used to cover the same class of people, those who were legally free and visibly of African descent. So as you can see, anyone who was melanated, especially in the British North American or the British American colonies, you were technically seen as a so-called Negro, whether you was free or not, you know, just based off of the complexion of your skin. All right, so let's continue. All right, so it says post-slavery. When the end of slavery came, the distinction between former free coloreds and former slaves persisted in some societies. Because of advantages in the social capital of education and experience, free people of color often became leaders for the newly freed people. In Saint Domingue, Toussaint Louverture had gained freedom before he became a leader in the slave rebellion, but he is not believed to have been of mixed race. This is important, the next one. In the United States, many of the African Americans elected as state and local officials during Reconstruction and the South had been free in the South before the Civil War. And we know the Civil War happened in what, 1865, 66, something like that? I might be wrong, but it's in 1860, something like that. Other new leaders were educated men of color from the North whose families had long been free and who went to the South to work and help the freedmen. Some were elected to offices. So once again, there's a distinction between freedmen and freemen, and that there were people who were free prior to the so-called Civil War. There were people who was free prior to the American Revolutionary War. All right. And today it says many descendants of the gens de couleur, or the free people of color of the Louisiana area, celebrate their culture and heritage through New Orleans-based Louisiana Creole Research Association, La Creole. The term Creole is not synonymous with free people of color or gens de couleur libre, but many members of the Louisiana Creole have traced their genealogies through those lines. Today, the often multiracial descendants of the French and Spanish colonists, Africans, and other ethnicities are widely known as Louisiana Creoles. Louisiana's Governor Bobby Jindal signed Act 276 on June 14, 2013, creating the prestige license plate, I'm Creole, honoring Louisiana Creoles' contributions and heritage. The terms Louisiana Creole and Cajun have sometimes been confused, as members of each group generally had ancestors who were French-speaking, aka they were French, but the terms are not synonymous. The Cajuns often had some ancestry tracing back to French colonists who were expelled from Acadia in eastern Canada and settled in Louisiana in the 18th century, generally outside the New Orleans area. Generations later, some of their culture relates to that of the Louisiana Creoles, but they are distinct. Members of each group may be multi-ethnic. So once again, brothers and sisters, you can see this is the reason why you need to do your genealogy, because once again, as you can see, those territories, those kingdoms, those folks that you think that you actually may not be connected or related to, contrary to popular belief, you are those people. All right, let's go ahead and continue. Okay, and with that information, finally, it brings us to the brother Henry Haywood, which is a New Jersey case, 1781. I think that's December 15th, 1781. So let's go ahead and read what it says. It says, event description. On December 15th, 1781, a black man named Henry Haywood was picked up and detained by the Princeton Constable John Totten as a potential runaway. Haywood maintained that he was a free man from Maryland and that he had been with the British troops, specifically with soldier or loyalist Mr. Rayleigh. When the British surrendered at the Battle of Yorktown, Virginia, the final battle of the Revolutionary War in October 1781, the constable published an ad notifying the public that Haywood be held as a runaway for 6 weeks. All right. So why this is important? Once again, we just read in regards that we know Negroes are Berbers. That was solidified from the 1740 South Carolina Negro Act. That was passed underneath the reign of King George II, who was who? A British monarch. We also just read in regards that Freeman goes back to the Kingdom of England, known as those who were freeborn. We know those who were known as Freemen were known as Berbers. We know Berbers are known as the sons of Berber, who can be traced back to the Kingdom of England, known as Anglo-Saxons. So now these Anglo-Saxon Berbers, aka Freemen, as we can see, are also known as free people of color, or uh, or uh, or Negroes. In this case, free Negroes. Excuse me. So we have a time frame going all the way back to the 12th century, and we know we can go prior, like it said in 1066 before William the Conqueror. So we know that these definitely were Berbers who existed before the Norman conquest or the Norman invasion, and these Berbers were known as freemen. And these freemen existed before the American Revolution and after the Civil War and before the Civil War. Now, in this case, in regards to this um, brother Henry Haywood, is because he's telling you that he was always a free man. He's in the territory, New Jersey, which we know is Crown territory, especially during his time. And we know that the Americans were fighting against the British. This was all during the American Revolution time. All right. So we need to know and get a better idea of this brother Henry Haywood, because we already know they say he's a black man, and we know a black man, aka, would be Negro, and we know these are Berbers. Well, let's go get an idea of the surname Haywood. All right, Haywood. History, family crest, coat of arms. And we see it goes back to England. All right, so as we can see, the brother definitely could be telling the truth. It says the etymology of Haywood. The name Haywood is part of the ancient legacy of the Anglo-Saxon tribes of Britain. Now, we definitely can say that he have to be who he say he is. Why? Because we read that the Berbers were Anglo-Saxons. We also read that the Berbers were known as Freemen. And we see brother Henry Haywood surname ties back not only to the Kingdom of England, but the Anglo-Saxon tribes of so-called Britain. So he himself was truly a freeman. Let's continue. It says the name was taken on by someone who worked as a person who was in charge of protecting an enclosed forest from damage by vandals, animals, and poachers. The name was originally derived from the Old English hay, which meant enclosure. Another source notes that the name is an occupational name, as in that Hayward, a keeper of cattle, literally hedge watcher. The duties of the Hayward were of a varied nature. His chief task seems to have been to guard the cattle at pasture, but he also protected the crops from thieves, trimmed the hedges, etc. In old poems, he is generally represented as carrying a horn. And to underscore the Saxon heritage, one learned source bluntly says, there is nothing Norman in this name. So as you can see, brother Hayward or Haywood was an Anglo-Saxon Berber. And from this case, he was an Anglo-Saxon Berber who potentially was known as a black loyalist. Now, I can't say for sure he was a loyalist, but from the description, he was with a loyalist named Mr. Rayleigh. So, evidence can point to say that he potentially could have been a loyalist, who they call Tories at this time. All right, let's check and see if we can find a little bit more information. It says transcript of the source document taken up as a runaway on December 15th. A Negro man who calls himself Henry Haywood and says is a free man and lived with a certain Mr. Rayleigh who was with the British Army at York, Virginia, was there taken at the surrender of that place and came away with Continental troops. He is a black fellow, marked with the smallpox, about 5 feet 9 inches high, had on a blue coat lined with red linen drawers. An old felt hat, says he formerly lived in Maryland. He seems to understand housework best and is very handy at that. The owner, if any he hath, is desired to come, pay charges, and take him away within the space of 6 weeks. Otherwise he will be discharged according to law by John Totten, Constable, Princeton, New Jersey, December 25th, 1781. So, brothers and sisters, this couldn't be a coincidence that the ancestors had me come and do this quick lesson. Not only for Brother Haywood, but for Brother Haywood's heirs, his successors, so that way they can see that he himself was a true Englishman, a free man at that, who we will call today in the Third Temple English Church of England an Anglo-Saxon Berber. And we see on Christmas in 1781, they had let the people know that whoever claimed Mr. Haywood, which Mr. Haywood knew he was a free man, had 6 weeks to come and get him. Now, is there more information to this case? Let's take a look. I'm not 100% sure. Okay, and then this last slide in regards to Mr. Haywood, as it says once again that he was a black man who resided in Maryland in the 18th century. He was trained in domestic service during the Revolutionary War. He was with the British Army at York, Virginia, and was associated with a white man named Mr. Rayleigh. The exact circumstances of his time with the British troops are uncertain, and he may have gone to the British seeking freedom. After the British surrendered at the Battle of Yorktown in 1781, Henry Haywood left with the Continental Army. A couple of months later, he was captured and detained in Princeton, New Jersey, and accused of being a fugitive from slavery. He denied the accusation and insisted that he was a free man. So, there you have it, brothers and sisters. Without a shadow of a doubt, we know that Mr. Henry Haywood, not only was he a free man, a free-born man, but he's an Englishman, aka Anglo-Saxon Berber, who just got caught up in the situation in regards to the American Revolutionary War by him not only being the complexion of those who were placed in bondage, but also too him being associated with the parties who the American colonists were warring with, in this case the British Crown. So he couldn't change who he was, and in this case it didn't turn out in his favor because he was locked up. But today we can fix those wrongs, because as us being the descendants of those people, we get to bring their stories to the light of day. All right, so now with that being understood, we're going to go ahead and close this lesson out by going to the Third Temple English Church of England, once again headed by our King Clifford Jefferson, by the Royal House of Plantagenet, who is known as the Cristo for the English heirs and successors today, aka he is the Christ who have come with the conscience of the Kingdom of England to come and reinvigorate the long lost English heirs with the life-giving water and breath for us to be able to be resuscitated and be brought back to full life. And this mission won't be able to be started without the original Christ for the English people, King Edgar the Peaceful, from the Royal House of Wessex. For those of you who don't know, the Royal House of Wessex ensign is the Wyvern or the Dragon, which was known as the first ensign or the first flag of the English people. So that is our flag as the English people, is the flag from the House of Wessex. And not only is he known as the King of England, He's also known as Emperor of Albion. And I read it, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Welcome to the Third Temple English Church of England. We as English heirs are ordained by blood to bring the truth to a world that has been living in darkness as we come forth with the law and the history of our forefathers and foremothers, instituted since time immemorial, written in the English Magna Carta 1215 and codified in the Statutes of Westminster 1275. And then this is the notice to the world, an international notice to the world from the heirs and descendants from the Kingdom of England, Great Britain, letting them know that we are in a state of emergency. And I would like to read it. It's dated December 3rd, 2974 of the Berber calendar. It says, to all citizens and subjects, international, domestic, and local public, private officials, heirs, trustees, successors, and whomever this may concern. Peaceful greetings to the world as a whole. My name is Deonde Belmont, an English heir and subject of the Kingdom of England and Great Britain. I am a descendant of the noble house of Belmont, and serve as Archbishop for the Third Temple English Church of England. As an advocate of the King of England, I represent English heirs, subjects of Great Britain, and descendants from the kingdom before the American Revolutionary War. Tragically, our predecessors were prisoners of war who were enslaved in the United States between 1776 and 1783 and falsely reclassified under politically constructed terms such as Negro, Black, Colored, African American, and other misappropriated labels that do not accurately reflect our heritage. Due to the anti-literacy laws enforced in America, which were not fully abolished until after the Civil War, our true identity remained obscured for generations. I advocate for these English heirs and subjects because after the war, our predecessors were unjustly placed in bondage. Through diligent genealogy research, we have uncovered our true identity and heritage, proving that we are legitimate heirs and descendants from the Kingdom of England, Great Britain. It is also important to note that our genealogy does not show any ancestry from Africa. Our mission is clear and urgent: to restore the rights, property, laws, life, legacy, peerage, customs, religion, value system, etc. of the Kingdom of England through the English Crown and the English Church, now known as the Third Temple English Church of England. We are committed to upholding our rights guaranteed under the Magna Carta and reinstituted under the Statutes of Westminster 1275. Through the Third Temple English Church, we are reviving the English Benedictine Reform, an intellectual movement whose foundations go back to our forebear King Edgar the Peaceful, and even further to King Alfred the Great. King Alfred incorporated the Ten Commandments, the Mosaic Code, and Christian Code of Ethics into what we now know as the Common Law of England. We urgently call upon an international community for support and solidarity. The descendants of the Kingdom of England and Great Britain are living today in the United States, unaware of their true heritage and rightful nationality. They are facing a state of emergency, suffering from numerous atrocities and injustices without their voices being heard. We have endured significant economic disadvantages and a severe lack of essential resources, crucial for our survival. Our community is plagued by insufficient access to nutritious food, polluted water, and contaminated air. We are being harshly marginalized on our own land, leading many of us to homelessness. Your assistance is urgent to help us reclaim what is rightfully ours. Stand with us to restore justice and dignity to those who have been wronged for far too long. Your support can make a difference in restoring the heritage and rights of these rightful heirs. Please help us in this urgent cause. Thank you for your compassion and solidarity. 1 John 3:17. But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Sincerely, Deonde Belmont, Archbishop of the Third Temple English Church of England, representative for the King of England. So, once again, brothers and sisters, we are those long lost angels who have come to return to reclaim what is ours, to help restore balance, peace, and harmony on the planet once again. And the only way for that to be done, we must know who we are so we can know what is our obligation and duty in this lifetime. So with that being said, I love you. Please stay tuned for future lessons. And once again, please like, share, subscribe to the lesson, to the channel. Don't forget to visit the Third Temple English Church of England YouTube page. Give a shout out to the King of England, King Clifford Jefferson, for the Rouse of Plantagenet for a job well done. And other than that, we'll see you brothers and sisters on the flip side. Peace.